I'm CB Lee with Paper Lantern Writers, and today I'm with Anna Brazel, one of our founding members, to talk about an important topic for those of us that write historical fiction, research. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
My background is that I've been reading forever since I was a small child. And then when I went to college, I studied American and European history and got a master's degree in history from Florida State University. And after that, I went to work for the state of Mississippi as an architectural historian.
So one of the things that we've talked about before is when you were writing, Fanny Newcomb, is that you use those Sanborn maps. Can you tell me a little bit more about those? When did they come into being? Where would I find them?
Okay, Sanborn Maps, very exciting. Sanborn Maps were created by the Sanborn Map Publishing Company of New York City around 1866, just after the Civil War, and they continued to build upon their map base until about the 1960s. And when we're talking about Sanborn maps, we're talking about maps of about 13,000 American cities. And these are maps that are basically called complex footprint maps, which means that a single footprint might be, this is my house, this is the footprint of my house, this is what it looks like, this is what it's made of, it's framed, so it's yellow, this is how many doors and windows it has, how many stories, this is what my roof looks like. But if you have that for my house, and that's a single footprint, a complex footprint map means that next to my house, you have another house and another house and another house and another house and another house for the entire city that I live in and all of the commercial buildings. And each of these footprints shows you what the building was made of, how many stories it was, what kind of roof structure it had, how many doors, how many windows. And when you get to the commercial parts of the city, it will tell you the businesses that were inside it. Like it might say Italian restaurant, or it might say warehouse, or tobacco company, or hotel, or church, or courthouse. So it really helps you. It's like a bird's eye of looking at an American city to understand the relationship of neighborhoods and blocks and individual houses to each other. So to understand Sanborn maps, all you need is a key. Every group of city maps had a key similar to one in this image from New Orleans. Once you understood the key, you could understand everything about the buildings on the map. As this example of New Orleans French Opera House shows, the maps displayed the footprints of building to scale, building materials used, red equals brick, yellow equals frame, blue equals stone, existing firewall information, locations of available water reservoirs, very important, other buildings in the area, and whether the building had a watchman, just to name a few of the map attributes. And here's a street view of New Orleans showing basically the French Quarter from Jackson Square to St. Louis Cathedral to Canal Street. And then here's a real close-up of Jackson Square showing St. Louis Cathedral.
Okay.
And if you look closely, if you look real closely, you can see the kind of businesses that were around the cathedral: the cooper shop, the carpenter, the snuff and fine cut tobacco factory, the state arsenal, the gun and locksmith, and the paints and oils.
What a great resource. Now, where would I go to find it?
Well, there are, as I said, 13,000 cities that were recorded by the Map Publishing Company. And the best place is to go online, and you will find that the Library of Congress has the majority of these maps already digitized. So you can go to the Library of Congress and put in a city that you're interested in researching. The city comes up and it'll probably give you 4 or 5 different dates that you can look at the map for that city for that date. You can also find these at individual libraries, like the San Francisco Library across the bay from me has the San Francisco books. when I worked in the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, we had the books for a lot of the cities in the state of Mississippi. So they're all over the country, but the big daddy, the big repository of Sanborn Maps is the Library of Congress.
Now, do other countries have something similar?
My research has shown that Great Britain has similar maps, and those are located in the British Library, and they are for England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And it looks like these maps begin about 1870, and they end right before World War II in the 1930s, which I think is a real shame, because it would be really interesting. It would be really heartbreaking to see the changes between a city like London from a 1935 map, from a 1945 map, to see the devastation of World War II. But you don't get to see that. You just get to see through the 1930s in England.
Yeah, that would make it very interesting, especially if you're writing that World War II book. So one of the things that you've been doing for Paper Lantern Writers on our blog is you've been doing these incredible links. And tell me, which ones have been your favorite ones so far?
Well, I've been doing link lists for almost 12 months now. The first one is kind of my favorite. It's the one I did in July 2020, and that was about photography. And if you've read my book, Fanny Newcomb, you know that I really enjoy photography. I really get into it. I think it's really fascinating. So I did a link list of some of the things I'd learned from writing Fanny Newcomb. And I linked to a lot of information about cameras, film, photography, early photographers, documentary photographers, and I even included some quotes from Abraham Lincoln and others. And again, I got to include a lot of photographs showing some of the early photography that had been meaningful to me.
And how long does it usually take you to put one of those link lists together?
I really work hard on these, and it can take anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 hours, because I come up with an idea of something that interests me, and first of all, I have to figure out, is that going to interest anybody else? I'm a history nerd, so something might interest me, but I'm really trying to open up the world to people who read our Paper Lantern Writers blog. So I have to figure out if it's interesting, and then I have to go out and seek those links, make sure they're good. I have to write about them, have to put them all in a logical order. So it takes a while, and it's very satisfying. I mean, it's fun for me, and it's work that's I really enjoy doing.
So I'm just curious, I mean, when you're looking for all of these links, where are you going? Some of them are like amazing, and they're resources that I have no idea even existed.
Oh, thank you. Start with the topic that interests me. So I've got a little bit of a baseline. I might have 20 links that I've already worked with, but the one I did recently about the 50 fabulous online collections for libraries, I did that based on a lot of libraries that I had researched at, like the Newberry Library in Chicago, which people just don't know about unless they live in Chicago. And also the Huntington Library in Southern California. I mean, there are some really localized libraries that you really don't know about, but I have run across them in my research.
So speaking of libraries, what kind of resources might they have that we don't find on the shelves?
Well, if you're lucky, like my Oakland Public Library, they might actually have a history room. So ours is on the second floor, and you have to go there. It's not in the main collection. You have to go there when the librarian is there for the day, and it will have a lot of information about Oakland. So you should always find out if your local public library has a history room. But my best bet has been to talk to the research librarian anywhere I go, and to tell them what I'm working on, what I'm looking for, and basically to say, do you know anything that you can tell me? Have I missed anything? You got anything special? And very often they'll say, oh, we do have these things that nobody's looked at in 20 years. This book down in the basement that hasn't been shown in 60 years, and we're thinking about deaccessioning it. So I've come across some good books just by asking the
Mhm,
librarian. And
mhm,
here's the thing, though, you often don't get to see it the same day because it is locked in the basement
mhm.
or it is locked up in the attic. And if they're a very small library, they can't get it for you right away. So you might have to agree to come back later to look at it.
Interesting. So thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful research information.
Oh, thanks, CV. I love to talk about it anytime.